You cannot talk about Princess Diana without mentioning the Martin Bashir interview for the BBC and Panorama in 1995.
A husband who loves someone else, yes. We're indicating that I was, again, unstable, sick, and should be put in a home of some sort in order to get better.
What effect did that have on you?
Pretty devastating. They see me as a threat of some kind.
Were you unfaithful?
Recently has sparked renewed controversy because of the circumstances around how did they get Lady Di to do it. They falsified bank statements, involved her brother, and it was almost like twisting her arm metaphorically. And even if I don't condone the means of making that interview happen, maybe you'll agree that it was a unique opportunity for Diana to just express what she really went through over all those years. And yes, there were already tell-alls in the form of books that were much more extensive and detailed than anything that could be said in less than an hour. But everyone needed to hear that directly from her, in her own words, with her body language and her own voice. That's what made this interview such an event. No doubts about it, the most relevant topic that everyone wanted to know was how she felt about Charles' relationship with Camilla. But I think it was much more critical being able to be open about her depression, bulimia, and self-harm. The BBC, who owns the right to the interview, has blocked every full version of this interview, but there are enough clips scattered around that are more than enough to do a full body language analysis. And for those gaps that lack video evidence, we also have the full transcript. What I'm going to do is make this first analysis about the interview's most relevant highlights about how her marriage went crashing down. If you'd like to have a second part with the rather obscure references and implications with the British monarchy, then just like this video. This is my promise. If this video gets to 10,000 likes, I'll make part 2. Welcome back, my body language buddies. My name is Jesus Enrique Rosas. I'm the body language guy, and it would be great if you join us by just subscribing and hitting that bell. Let's get down to it.
Do you think Mrs. Parker Bowles was a factor in the breakdown of your marriage?
Well, there were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded.
It's amazing how much range of emotions we can spot in just 10 seconds. First, we know that by this point Diana had absolutely no emotions tied to that romantic triangle because she had no reaction upon hearing Camilla's name in one of the most pressing questions of the interview. She tries to shrug it off, like saying that she doesn't have anything to do with that, by raising her eyebrows when saying a bit crowded. She's trying to joke about it. Then there's this expression. Most of the time I trust my gut, and in this case my first impression is that it was contempt. When staring a bit longer, I noticed a mix between sadness and mocking. I would be glad to read your own impression in the comments. But there's overall sadness here because the whole interview is trying to unveil all those harsh moments of her life as princess. So that's something that we should take into account. When you're trying to decipher facial expressions, it's important to be aware if there's an emotion that is common to the whole video or conversation. Right after that, she lowers her gaze, as in being ashamed of having to talk about that topic. You can overcome a relationship failure, but it's normal that you're not going to like being so public about it anyway. In other parts of the interview, when Bashir mentions the biography by Jonathan Dimbleby, her reaction to this topic is similar. Watch the next clip, both listening and spotting the body language clues. In this case, the listening is very important. You're about to understand why.
He says that your husband renewed his relationship with Mrs. Camilla Parker Bowles. Were you aware of that?
Yes, I was. But I wasn't in a position to do anything about it. Yes, I was. But I wasn't in a position to do anything about it.
What evidence did you have that their relationship was continuing?
I suggested that you pay real attention to Diana speaking because it's her normal voice. No highs or lows in her voice tone, no stuttering, no cracking. There are no emotional markers that we could perceive listening. We know that there's this stress only by the way she presses her lips a couple times and swallows hard. This is an often overlooked body language tip that you could count as a secret if you'd like to call it that way. And it's to always try to isolate what you hear from what you see. Imagine that you're perceiving two people at the same time, that you are trying to divide both channels of perception. And this is something that you have to do consciously. You have to consciously think that you're perceiving gestures and sound separately. Because the brain usually takes shortcuts, and if one stimulus, for example her voice, is more notorious than the other, then your mind could trick you into hiding her facial expressions. It's just like magicians that use misdirection to conceal the secret of their tricks. They take advantage of that quirk in our brains. You can practice overcoming those mind shortcuts by just rewinding a video and trying again. With practice, you will be able to do it in a real-time conversation. Let's try again with the following clip.
What evidence did you have that their relationship was continuing even though you were married?
A woman's instinct is a very good one.
You can have a sense of that friction between Diana wanting to speak, to open up, and at the same time having that sense of self-censorship, that duty, so to speak, of not disclosing her emotions. At some points it was just the constant pushing of Bashir that she decided to give more details. Notice how Diana relaxes a bit in the next clip.
Is that all?
Well, I obviously had knowledge of it.
From staff?
Well, from people who minded and cared about our marriage, yes.
When we watch these clips one by one, it's a bit easier for us to spot these changes in attitude. A way you can practice so you can apply it on a real conversation. The idea is being able to tell when people get tense or relaxed with certain topics so you know how you can proceed. In this case, Diana was beginning to relax a bit, maybe because the most direct questions about the most uncomfortable topic had finished. Bashir switched it to asking about the people around them, around Diana and Charles.
What effect did that have on you?
Pretty devastating. Rampant bulimia, if you can have rampant bulimia, and just a feeling of being no good at anything and being useless and hopeless and failed in every direction. Wow.
Besides the face touching, there are few emotional markers here, and what's relevant is that she is answering pretty devastating, a very raw statement together with rampant bulimia. That is not an easy thing to say. In many cases, talking about these topics and being so calm, even detached emotionally, could make you jump to conclusions and say, this person is lying. And no matter who you analyze, there will always be the possibility that the person is, at the very least, stretching the truth. In Diana's case, I don't think she was lying. It seems to me that instead she feels that she will not gain anything from playing the victim, so she just tells how she deals with all this. That being said, even if her body language doesn't give much clues in this last clip, notice how she emphasizes her emotional state 4 times. A feeling of being no good at anything and being useless and hopeless and fail in every direction. Those are 4 very strong statements. This is why it's so important to actually listen to what people are saying. Most of her answers are short and to the point. These 4 statements emphasize how she was crippled by Charles cheating. And this is how you can spot how important is certain topic to a person. Yes, there are other moments of the interview when Diana was clear about everything she could do to save her marriage. Like when she said, I come from a divorce background and I didn't want to go into that one again. So that's why she felt no good at anything and useless and hopeless. That's how important her marriage was to her.
And with a husband who was having a relationship with somebody else?
Was a husband who loved someone else, yes.
But it was hard not just for the fact that she knew that Charles was cheating on her, but also his department, his staff, was progressively gaslighting her.
It was already difficult, but it became increasingly difficult. On my husband's side were indicating that I was, again, unstable, sick. and should be put in a home of some sort in order to get better. I was almost an embarrassment.
I already pointed out in another analysis of Diana and Charles how it was so easy for her to just steal the spotlight. And maybe steal is not the right word because she did not understand how she did it. At the start of this interview, you see that she refers to herself at that time in the first years like this. As far as I was concerned, I was a fat, chubby 20-year-old, 21-year-old, and I could understand the level of interest. And to put it in perspective, in 1983, Diana undertook her first overseas tour and her first ever trip abroad at just 22 years of age. Together with Charles and their baby Prince William, spent more than 40 days in Australia and New Zealand, seeing the sights and meeting with dignitaries and locals alike. She proceeds to tell Bashir that for 40 days, Diana heard the same sentence over and over again. "Oh, she is on the other side." Bashir went like, "What? What do you mean by being on the other side?" She meant that when she was with Charles and they were together greeting the public, maybe walking along the street or a road, there were people on each side of them. So Charles greeted one side and she greeted the other side. And she couldn't help but listen people on Charles' side, like this girl here, being really disappointed and vocal that they had to greet him and not her, that she was on the other side and away from them. And in retrospective, she understands that it was a shock for a man that was so used to be in the spotlight, to be in the news, to have all cameras and headlines and smiles on him, suddenly play second fiddle to his 22-year-old wife. And we can only imagine the impact of listening the same complaint from people over and over again in mornings, afternoons and evenings for 40 days straight. We already know that Charles is a tremendously insecure man, and this was devastating for his ego. He had never needed to handle anything like this, so he reacted in the most childish way possible. I was feeling jealous of her and starting to resent her. If you wonder what could have been the healthy way of reacting to the situation, it would have been to recognize that your wife has the uncanny ability to mesmerize the public and find a way that you can make it useful for your service as royal. Charles' reaction is an indication that he is a narcissist because he couldn't handle well, or couldn't handle at all, that rejection. Diana said that she didn't have any training to deal with those public outings, and at the same time it would have been baffling for the British monarchy the way her popularity literally exploded virtually overnight. Whether it was a virginal tale come to life, her poise, her beauty, it was a spark. But then became a raging fire the moment that she began to care and listen to people rejected from society. For example, people with AIDS. Something never seen anything like that in the monarchy. That's why sometimes people wonder, okay, we know that many years before meeting Diana, there was all this chemistry between Charles and Camilla. And they could not marry because reasons. But the fact that he rejected Diana so viscerally was a matter of bitter jealousy. That's why when all this scandal of their separation exploded, he did all in his power to neutralize her, including isolation.
Well, there's no better way to dismantle a personality than to isolate it.
So you were isolated?
Mm-hmm. Very much so.
Of course, there's also the fact that Diana had her own way of dealing with all this, including her relationship with James Hewitt.
Did your relationship go beyond a close friendship?
Yes, it did. Yes.
Were you unfaithful?
Yes, I adored him. Yes, I was in love with him. But I was very let down.
That's more subtle pain in her expression, but pain nonetheless. James Hewitt was someone that she thought that she could trust, that even had a relationship with him, and he used that trust to publish a book to monetize that relationship. It's a matter of putting in perspective the way Diana felt so lonely for so many years and betrayed so many times in so many different ways, and most people snap under these circumstances. And it's no wonder she suffered from depression.
I've never had a depression in my life. But then when I analysed it, I could see that the changes I'd made in the last year had all caught up with me. And my body had said, we want a rest.
Most of the time, you can tell that a loved one is hiding concerns about their own mental health by just changes in their behavior. To start developing your abilities in detecting these nonverbal clues, I suggest you download my 100 body language tips right in the description of this video. And her depression was weaponized by the royal family.
A wonderful new label is Diana's unstable, and Diana's mentally imbalanced. And unfortunately, that seems to have stuck on and off over the years.
I noticed something really funny in here. Well, funny in the sense of interesting and odd at the same time. When Diana says the word unstable, she has this really defiant stare, like she's almost proud of that. I don't mean that she was proud of the label itself, of being seen unstable or have an unhealthy attitude. I think that she saw the royal family, and you remember that she called them fucking family once in one leaked phone call. She saw them like blockheads. Like, these people are absolutely detached from what the world is suffering out there. And they're calling me unstable.
Talking to me?
Obviously, the first couple hundred times she was called that, she must have felt hurt. But as years went by and she began to heal by her work with real people, she must have realized there's nothing wrong with me at all. It is you, the royal family, who are wrong. That's why she feels almost proud of being called unstable on those circles. The problem is that she did not have any kind of support to endure this process. There was no one that she could trust, and that's when the bulimia really kicked in. So let me know if you want part 2 of this analysis, where I would cover how she overcame her depression, how she thought about the possibility of being queen, and the differences when talking about William versus Harry. All you have to do is like this video, and if it gets to 10,000 likes, I'll make that second part. I would be really grateful if you consider supporting my channel either by joining as a member here on YouTube or becoming one of my supporters on Patreon. You can also make a donation using the PayPal link in the description. Take care, my body language buddies.